Hey, this is Ron at the Radiologic Technologist.com doing a quick video response to Kathleen. Um, this is an important question to me. A lot of things are stirring up in our market right now in the radiologic technology market because of COVID. And I think there's a general awakening among the techs. We've been kind of being abused for a long time. And there's a general awakening of we're not going to tolerate that anymore. And so Kathleen's question that came to me through the radiologictechnologist.com just says, I can't seem to get a straight answer from the school I want to attend, and I won't mention the state, if being 59 years old when I graduate will end up resulting in no job due to age. Of course, a school wants you to do their program, but they aren't responsible for jobs at the end of it, and it's all up to how you do your practicing, right? And who you get to know. Just worried I'll put in 2 years, give up a so-so paying job, and come out struggling with PRN jobs and night shifts. Kathleen, very valid point. And so there's a lot of aspects to that. Now, I've been in the field almost 20 years, so I'm just giving you my opinion. I'm a multimodality technologist who's made it through administration up to a system level. And let me tell you what I know. So schools are held accountable for graduating technologists who can't find a job. That does not look good on the school. The state pays attention to that. The state, if they're getting money from the state, if it's a public school, and private schools do get some funding as well, they monitor like how big the class size is. For example, here where I'm at in Idaho, I went to the local community college and said, can you please graduate more than 12 in your classes? I need more than that. And the head of the program, who does a really great job, said his hands are tied because he has to be able to prove that he can provide jobs for the people that he graduates. Otherwise, it's an oversaturation of the market. Now, we have seen an oversaturation in years past. Back in around 08, when we had the market crash, there was a whole bunch of schools out. I was in the Phoenix market at the time. We had like 8 schools. Of course, that's a big area, but it was pumping out too many people, and that came around full swing. They weren't finding jobs. But if you get to know the field and you kind of allude to it with your PRN jobs and night shifts, there are ways to make ends meet until you land a full-time job. Now, to kind of skip forward to that part of the answer, sometimes you get lucky and land a full-time job right at the beginning. Most of the time you have to start off at the bottom, just like any other career. The people that have been there the longest are the ones that want the 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, cushy stuff. I personally like the night shift. I'd rather be there at night when there was less administration walking around and you can kind of do things at your own pace. And you tend to see a little bit more of the traumas at night. But you may have to take, regardless of your age, you may have to take a PRN gig at more than one location to make ends meet until you can get your foot in the door or land the full-time gig. The other side of that is managers hire their PRNs into their full-time positions because they've gotten to know them and trust them. So that's only logical unless your clinical rotation, you did such an outstanding job as a student that they're comfortable hiring you into a full-time position. And that's completely possible. I did that plenty of times. It just depends on what's open when you graduate. If there's a handful of full-time spots open and you did a good job at your clinical, you have a great shot at, make sure my mic was on, great shot at getting the position. If there's no spots open, it doesn't matter how awesome you were as a student. You're just going to have to take a PRN. And you don't really mention where you are in that particular state. So if you're in a smaller town, the jobs might be more scarce. If you're in a larger town, you may have more facilities to choose from. Don't be afraid of the PRN gig, because being a PRN means you can say no. When you're full-time or part-time on a set schedule, you can't say no. You have to work what they give you. When you're a PRN, the dirty little secret is they can beg you to work and you don't have to accept it. Now, you don't want to turn it down too often, or then you might be getting less requests. But PRN is, it should be a higher pay because you're not getting benefits, and you have the option of saying yes or no. And where you exercise that option to say no is if they're calling you at the last minute. Now, if they call you at the last minute, you can also counter negotiate for some kind of perk. I worked at a hospital in Chandler, Arizona that had tokens. It had a token system, a literal wooden token system, and you would earn that token by coming in at the last minute, and then you would take your token to the HR department and turn it in for movie tickets or some type of a debit card, prepaid Visa card, whatever it was. I don't know how many hospitals are doing these kind of perks anymore with COVID and all that mess that we're in now. But the other side of this topic of am I too old? And I've done another video on this already. But when you're a manager, you want somebody you can count on. And there's a bit of a, how do I say that? Well, let's just default back to how you do on your clinical rotations. If you do a good job on your clinical rotations, it'll show, and it won't matter how old you are. The negative side, I guess I'll call it, of the age thing is an employer is going to put a couple of years of training into you to get you where you're comfortable. Now, in radiology, you're kind of going through that when you're a student. So really, when you come out, graduate, and get your license, you should be hitting the ground running, and the employer does not really have to invest that much more into you. In other, in other industries where you start on day one learning what's going on, that employer is in you for a couple of years before they're really starting to get their return on their investment. And so, if you were coming in fresh at 59 and they were going to put a couple of years in, then you're looking at 61 before you're at the break-even point. And then they start thinking, well, if she retires at 65, I'm only going to get 4 years out of her before she retires. So I invested 2 years to get 4 years out. Is that as good as I could get if I were to hire a 21-year-old and put 2 years in and get 40 years out, or whatever? That's the negative side. If you have, and there's no telling what the administrators at your hospital are going to be thinking, because I've certainly met my fair share of jerkwads out there. So, if all they're concerned about is what they're going to get out of it, where, in my opinion, what they should be looking at is this is this person is a part of our community. This person is a part of our family in the community, and they do a good job, and therefore I will employ them until they can no longer work or no longer wish to work. And it has nothing to do with age or gender or religion or any of that stuff. The other side of it could be, are you going to be able to do everything that you need to be able to do at 59 when you graduate? Are you going to be able to move a patient onto a table? Are you going to be able to assist a patient from the table to a wheelchair? Are you going to be able to slide a patient down on the table if they need slid? The counter argument to that is you don't have to do that by yourself. There should always be someone else in the department that you can call for lifting assistance, and 2 or 3 or 4 people show up. Everybody gloves up, everybody on the count of 3, you move the patient. Because, the problem with doing that stuff on your own is you're prone to injury. And we've all seen it. I've done it. Being on the night shift, they expect you to do a lot of this stuff on your own. There's nobody else around sometimes when you're on the night shift. But that doesn't mean you can't go find somebody. I could go find somebody in the ER. I could call any other department nearby and say, I'm going to need some lifting assistance in about 10 minutes. Can you meet me in CT or whatever? So the only counter arguments to your age at 59 would be, how many years does she have left in the field once we train her? And is she going to be able to do everything that we need her to do? And the answer to both of those should be that you're fine, because you can always ask for assistance if needed, just like everybody else should be doing, because nobody should be throwing their back out trying to move a patient on their own. That's why I'm a big proponent of Hoyer lifts and that kind of thing. And longevity. My dad worked till he was 73. I couldn't get that guy to retire. So, if you look at it that way, you got 20 more years left. Hopefully not, but hopefully you can retire before that. But, you know, overall, your concerns are legitimate because what you're asking about lies in the hands of the employers, and it's not up to you. And so maybe what you can do is research who's there now, who's working there now. Um, how old are their current employees? Can you shadow? Can you go shadow at these clinical rotations? That should be allowed, even with COVID. There's, sometimes it's too tight of restriction, but they might be able to let you in there and meet some people. And then I would also say, don't be afraid to look around and see how many positions are open in the area. Don't put all your eggs in one hospital basket, so to speak. Look around and see where you might be, because sometimes just a couple of PRN gigs are better than one solid. Depends on the location. So see if you can figure out who's working there. Ask the school, have you ever had anybody graduate at 59 before? Were they able to find a job? You can ask that kind of stuff at the school. And that's a telltale sign if they don't want to answer you. I'd be leery of that. How many people have you graduated at age 59? Did they find a job right away? If not, how long did it take them to find a job? And I could tell you in my class back in 2003, I had people in their 50s in my class that were, what was the name of that? There was a computer chip maker in Scottsdale that laid a bunch of people off. And so they got to go back and get retrained, and we got some of them. Microchip or micro something. Anyway, there was one in my class. I think she was around 55. She went on to into a career in Xray. And my wife, when she went through the program after me, that ended up being her clinical instructor at that location. I mean, if you want to do it, do it. There's also other things you can do. If you get your license, don't forget that you can be a vendor, a sales rep, a service rep, an app specialist where you teach people how to use the machine. Good friend of mine was an Xray tech for a long time, got sick of a particular director who tried to make him work on a Christmas one year, and he quit and said, I'm going to do something else. And he ended up teaching for GE. He was a C-arm rep. He just traveled around to hospitals on the West Coast and would set up a C-arm in the OR, and employees would show up, and he'd spend 30 minutes showing them how to use the C-arm, and then he'd get a couple-hour break, and he'd just kind of hang out there all day long. And as the techs rotated in, he'd show them how to use the C-arm, and then he'd do that for 2 days, and then that assignment was done, and he enjoyed his gig. So there's lots of other things you can do with that Xray license besides shooting X-rays. And don't forget too, that sets you up for DEXAs. I tend to see a lot of 50 plus techs in mammography. So in mammography, they're doing DEXA scans over there as well. Sky's the limit, Kathleen. Do what you want to do and see where it takes you. And I guess the other way to look at it is you're always going to find somebody that tries to stop you from doing what you want to do, right? You're always going to have some person out there in your way. You just got to go around them. So go to school, research the school, make sure it's a good school. I don't know which one you're looking at. If you want to send that to me, I'm happy to research that for you. But yeah, if that's what you want to do, I'd say go for it. If you have any other questions, let me know. Hit the like button if it's helped. Subscribe if you will. I appreciate it, and have a great week.